On the fourth day of Livemass, my true love gave to me 4 Christmas gifts, 3 wise men, 2 testaments, and some microchips in the vaccine. Hello, welcome back to the next day of Livemass, 4 Christmas spirits. And if you're wondering, what does that mean? I'm talking about the spirits of Christmas from the Charles Dickens classic, A Christmas Carol. And if you're thinking just like the thumbnail did, 4? I thought there were 3. Well, I'm including Jacob Marley for today. And he was the first ghost to visit Scrooge. So we'll get to that in a minute. First, though, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. I hope you were well and that you're safe and warm where you are. If you're living in Northeast Ohio, that is. If you're outside, I just hope you had a Merry Christmas. So let's begin. So as I was thinking about, I was watching A Christmas Carol last night, in fact, it dawned on me that A Christmas Carol is a great example of demonstrating kind of the gospel. And you could use it as a gospel technique. Now, I know it's after Christmas, but maybe next year, maybe later, you can do it in the middle of summer if it works. Now, let me make it clear that this is not what Charles Dickens' original intent was. I am not one of those people that find a Christmas symbol and make up a story about how, it was made to defend Christianity, like the candy cane. That's that thing about the candy cane discussing Christ. That's an interesting lesson, but that's not why it was made. So again, there's no need to make up misinformation. It's a really great object lesson. Just use it. And that's what this is. It's an object lesson. It is not the original intent or anything like that. So don't go telling people, do not tell people that this is what Charles Dickens really meant. Or go ahead and spread lies if you want. But at any rate, let's get to it. So how do the 4 ghosts of Charles Dickens' classic, A Christmas Carol, help the gospel? Well, first, let's discuss that. If you haven't seen it, read the book or see the movie. In fact, the 1984 version is free on YouTube, and that's my personal fave with George C. Scott. But basically, you have Ebenezer Scrooge, who is a miser, a cheap guy who's really cruel. He's the ultimate corporate hates everybody, hates Christmas, hates his coworker Bob Cratchit, and Bob's a poor guy. In fact, Bob's his clerk. And Scrooge is a very successful businessman, lots of money, but he detests the poor, to the point where when asked by charity workers if he would donate to the poor during the Christmas season, he just said, well, if the prisons, poorhouses, and treadmills are operational and my taxes pay for that, where's the problem? And when mentioned, will some people die, he said, great, then let them die and be rid of the surplus population. And Scrooge was later visited by his previous his previous partner, Jacob Marley, who came to him as a ghost and warned him that you're going to be visited by 3 spirits who are going to try to change your ways. Because if you look at me, I was a great man of business, but Marley came with chains upon him, long linking chains and weights, and he had to wander the earth as penance, carrying this heavy weight that he forged because all he cared about was money, and he neglected all that was good in humanity. And that became a chain upon his soul. And so he warned Scrooge, and Scrooge was visited by the ghost of Christmas past, who showed him his past, how he kind of became a jerk, how he changed from how he had a tumultuous childhood, but had a chance to be a real good guy, but then made his idol money and lost the love of his life, lost everything, lost his heart, lost his soul to that golden idol. Ghost of Christmas Present showed him how people were. And for example, it showed the Marleys, or not the Cratchits, his coworker his worker who, though they were poor, they were rich in spirit and had a wonderful life. Even though they didn't have a very big Christmas dinner, they made the best of it. And that's where Scrooge learns that Bob's youngest son, Tim, is probably going to die because he's not getting the proper care he needs and he has medical issues. And then he also goes and visits with the ghost of Christmas spirit or present. He sees his nephew, Fred, having a wonderful time at a Christmas party, which Scrooge was invited to, but ignored. He was missing out on all the fun. And then the Spirit showed him people celebrating Christmas no matter where their circumstances were. And it also showed them the poor and the want of the world that Scrooge ignores. And finally, Scrooge sees the Ghost of Christmas Future. And the Ghost of Christmas Future shows that Scrooge is going to die and no one will care about him. They'll pillage his body. They'll dump him in a shallow grave and say, adios, jerk. And after that, he changes his mind. He changes his life. He becomes a much better person. And what a wonderful, magical way of demonstrating the gospel. Here's how you can do it. Real simple. 1, Jacob Marley. Jacob Marley would be the prophets, let's say, or all the people in the Bible that warned us about our state. God made us to have relationship with him, but unfortunately, sin entered. And that's not your fault. That's not my fault. We're just born with that unfortunate nature. We can't but help be separated from God. It's not anything we did when we were born. We were born with this unfortunate curse upon us. And the prophets came to warn us that this is the state you're in. You cannot earn your way to heaven. You cannot earn your way out of this. You cannot do good enough, well enough. You are doomed. But there is a way. There is a way out if you listen. And that way, of course, is Jesus. And Jesus kind of represents all three spirits. Jesus comes and points out your past. He points out where there was difficulty and strife and pain. And even if you've had a relatively good life, you've not had for want of anything, you've been relatively well adjusted, good family life, you could see that there's times in your life where there's just been little holes, where you've seen you're missing something. Everybody feels that. Everybody feels like there's something greater you hope for. I can speak for myself and my wife that before we were Christian, it terrified us, the idea of death, because it was this idea of empty oblivion. Then what? So everything I did and worked for is just gone? That's terrifying. That's not restful. That's horrible. So Jesus points out, and maybe you didn't have a good life. Jesus is pointing out, hey, I can take you away from that. And also, regardless of that past and sin that because of that sin, you can't be good enough. But regardless of that, I'm not going to count that against you. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future, Jesus shows you the life you could have. He shows you the life without guilt. He shows you that I can take away the burden of trying to earn it or be good enough or not feel guilty or whatever barriers are to that hole you're trying to fill. He's pointing out, this is what I can do for you now. And it might not be financial success. That's not what Jesus is about, but rather I can give you that hope. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future, he shows that, well, there's two choices, really. One, you can avail yourself of those benefits I just showed you about with the present, and then return yourself, because Jesus' sacrifice, accepting of his propitiation, as the Bible calls it, brings us back to God. It brings us back. We don't stop being sinners, unfortunately, at least not right away. When we die, we'll be made right with him and our souls will be cleansed. But at the exact moment, if you think, oh, I'm Christian, I stopped sinning. No, I wish, but that's not the case. However, what it does mean is that's not counted against you. In the present, that goes to your past, and Jesus picks you up, dusts you off, and says, well, come back with me. We can make this work. And that brings you back to God so that the relationship is restored. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future is when Jesus points out that really in the future, there's two paths only when you die. If you chose the path of restoration, as he just showed you, you basically get to have eternity as it should be. You're going to have that relationship. You're going to have that immortality. that immortal spirit, and one day you will be a perfect being. It'll be just as it was meant to be. The holes, the pain, the longings will be gone. The tears will be gone. Or you can opt for your way, which unfortunately is the empty one. It leads to that life without God and to what we as Christians would call hell. Now, do we know precisely what that means? No, but we know it's not good. We have an idea that there's fire, but what we do know is that it's eternity without Him, God. It's an eternity of suffering. It's probably all your wants magnified manifold. And Jesus is trying to say, with the Ghost of Christmas Future, I'm trying to pull you away from that. Which side will you take to restore the relationship? So this is just an idea of how you could use that either in this Christmas season, next Christmas season, or as I said, if you ever find yourself in a class having to read that book, or whenever the mood strikes you. If the Holy Spirit says use the Christmas Carol analogy and it works on somebody, then great. But it's just an interesting way to use everyday things for the gospel, however God uses the mundane and everything else to uplift His name, and how we can use whether we eat or drink or whatever for the name of God. So I'll see you tomorrow for the next live stream.